Hey, welcome to my channel. My name is Bob. This video is the first part of a series in which we're going to make a game in VR. You will learn how to set up the VR player controller, how to use your Oculus controllers to show hands in-game that represent the different hand motions, and you're going to learn how to grab and interact with objects. Let's dive in. To get started building this game, you need to create a new project in Unity. Just a 3D project will be fine. I have already created one here. And we need two main plugins in order to get started with it. One of which is the Oculus XR plugin, which you can get via the package manager. And the other one is an asset that provides all the script we need that Oculus already provides in order to create an OVR player, which is an Oculus VR player. Or to get custom hands that connect with your controllers, and they allow you to see your hands in VR in the scene, mimicking a lot of the gestures that you do with your controllers as well. So first of all, just go to the package manager and search the Unity registry for Oculus, and you should get the Oculus XR plugin, and make sure to install that one. And the second thing you will need is from the asset store. So just make sure to search online and just type in Oculus integration. And it should be the first result right here. Then make sure you import it into Unity and then open it back up in Unity. It should then pop up underneath the My Asset section. As you can see here, Oculus integration. And just make sure to import all of the files that it provides. So just make sure to import all of them, and then they should pop up in a folder underneath your assets called Oculus. And if you look into that, you can see a lot of these different categories as well. We're mainly going to use the OVR player and OVR custom hands. Also just make sure that you've set up your project build settings correctly, which is the Android. Make sure you switch to the Android platform with the ASTC texture compression. And make sure to have selected in the player settings at XR plugin management the Oculus tab, and at player settings make sure you have a minimum Android API level of 29 or Android 10.0. Alright, so now it's time to get started building the basic scene. For that we will start off creating a plane and scaling it out by pressing R. And we'll make a little box from which we can pick up the gun later on, which will just be a cube. We can zoom in by double clicking on the cube and scaling it out just a bit like that, and creating a bit more of a boxed shape, a little bit lower even. So just like that should be fine. Let's assign some basic materials so we can actually see a little bit of a difference between these two objects. For that, I recommend just going to Assets and creating a new folder, as it's pretty nice to just keep your stuff organized, especially when your project gets much bigger. So just make a folder with materials, and within that folder create a new material, which we can call, or which we're going to make something for the grass. So let's just make that fairly green, and we can call that grass material. And just create another material for the box, which should be a little bit brown, just like that. And we can call that box material. And just make sure it actually does apply it. Alright, so we can drag those materials into the scene. So drag the box material onto the box and the grass material onto the grass. And later on we'll be adding additional assets to make it look even better, but for now this will do just fine. So in order to add the OVR player controller, search through your assets for OVR player and drag the OVR player object into your scene. The OVR player controller contains a lot of the different functionalities that you need in order to connect it to the Quest. So it contains the camera, it contains a tracking space, and it has a lot of objects that represent the positions of the different eyes and the different hands present. So left eye, and the left hand and right hand. These anchors we can later on use to put objects on the same position so that it just looks like you're holding a certain object, or that your hand is actually at the same space where the hand position is at. For the OVR camera rig, I always recommend going for the floor level tracking origin type, as that means that you can actually move up and down in the scene as well. And as you can see right now, we're in the scene that we just created with the little box in front of us. We can move around with the left joystick controller, and we can make turns with the right stick in increments. So that's already pretty cool. But let's now add some more objects to actually interact with and make the scene a little bit more interesting. So now that the player controller is configured, we can configure the custom hands in the scene. For that, just make sure to look for custom hand in your assets, and there should be 2 prefabs that pop up, and those are part of the Oculus integration package that we installed earlier. So go ahead and drag the left hand custom prefab in the left hand anchor, and obviously the right hand underneath the right hand anchor. And if we build this game, you should be able to see the different gestures that we can do with the controllers when you're pointing your fingers or putting a thumbs up, etc. And those will render pretty nicely in my opinion. And as you can see, we're in the scene right now, and you see the custom hands representing the gesture that we have with the controllers. So if I lift up my thumbs, you can see that they are moving with it. I can point towards something, I can open my hands, I can grab an object, I can really mimic a lot of these gestures with these controllers, and that's super cool because it works actually really well. So now let's get into the fun part and make sure that we actually have something to interact with. And in order to interact with any object in Unity, we need 2 different scripts. One of the scripts is actually already a part of the custom hands that we just dragged into the scene, and it is called the OVR grabber. And the other script is called the OVR grabbable. So let's make a little cube that is actually that we're gonna grab into the scene, and let's scale it down to 10 centimeters in width and height. And let's just drag it onto the table. We need to add 2 components in order to make these cubes actually grabbable. The first one is then the OVR grabbable script. And the second thing that we need is to add a rigid body. These are the 2 requirements for any object that Oculus needs in order to grab it. And we're just going to use the snap position as well, and the snap orientation. So you always grab it in the same kind of position no matter where you actually grab the cube, and it interacts a little bit more nicely. So let's go ahead and duplicate the cube a few times so we have a few more things to play with. And let's grab them again, duplicate these 3. And I'm actually going to move the cubes a little bit forward so they're easier to grab. And there you go, here we are in the scene, and we can actually grab the objects by just reaching out and pressing the grip button. And we can interact with the cubes as you would really expect. So now let's make this even a bit more interesting and add the gun to our scene, get rid of these cubes, and start really building this game. So first things first, let's get rid of these cubes, we won't need them anymore. And now we need to just add a gun prefab. And for that one, I really recommend the one from Nokobot. It's called Modern Guns Handgun. You can get it from the asset store, so just make sure to look for it and import it into Unity. I'm going to import it right now. I already have it in the My Assets section. And just make sure to search for 1911 shooting, and you get 2 different handguns. One is black, one is silver. I'm going to go for the silver one and just dragging it into the scene. We just need to add a few scripts to it in order to grab it, just as we did with the cubes. So we will need to add a rigid body, the OVR grabbable, but we also need a collider. Normally a lot of these objects in Unity, these 3D objects already have a collider with it. This gun, however, does not have a collider in it, so we will need to create a custom collider for it. And to do that, just create an empty game object, and let's call it gun collider. And underneath this gun collider, just add a few cubes. And we're going to scale these cubes down to mimic the size of the gun. So let's just make it, let's make the first one the size of the barrel roughly, a little bit smaller, and this way as well. And let's just overlay it on this gun barrel and just make it a little bit more thin. And then you can see that we can roughly mimic the shape of the gun here. And go ahead and duplicate this one, rotate it just a bit so we can get the handle. And once that is done, make sure to select both of these cubes and remove the cube mesh and the mesh renderer so that only the box collider is left over. And then on this handgun, at this OVR grabbable script, make sure to drag these two cubes into the grab points. And they should both be visible here. In order to make sure that we grab the gun in a correct manner, we are going to, in order to make sure that the gun is grabbed in the correct manner, you have to make sure that the offset that the OVR grabbable is linked to is the offset that really and in order to make sure that the gun renders in the right position, you're going to create a separate game object that has the offset that we need. For that, create an empty game object and let's call it gun offset. Make sure to zero its position out in the transform. And do the same for the gun to align those game objects on the same position. The gun offset will roughly need to be, its X offset will need to be minus 0.075, Y offset needs to be 0.038, and the Z offset needs to be minus 0.08 for this model specifically, with a Z rotation of 180. Then go ahead and drag the gun offset in your assets. And then on the handgun itself, make sure to drag the gun offset into the snap offset and make sure that the snap position and snap orientation are also checked. And then go ahead and put the gun back on the table again. So now, as you can see, we can grab the gun just as you should expect it. And its position is this exactly correct. We can use it, we can grab the gun, we can throw it around, we can look down the sights, and that's all we need for now. There you go, we set up the first bits for this game. We've set up the OVR player controller, the custom hands with the Oculus controllers, and learned how to grab and interact with objects in the scene. In the next video, we're going to look at how to use scripting to interact with the gun, shoot the gun, and get vibration on the controllers as well to make this game even a little bit more real. I'll see you in the next one.